Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Morehead, and today we have an episode with Gorilla, the artist. He's also my uncle, so it was a great pleasure to have him on. His work deals in themes of hope and the macabre, it seems, and he uses several mediums, including sculpting and painting, as his primary means. He is also a strong supporter of the channel. You can support the channel as well if you go on my Patreon. As of right now, I am doing free trials on certain tiers. If you want to support the channel and support what I do, then please go on there, and that'll help me immensely. So, without further ado, here is Gorilla. Well, how you doing, Sean?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Pat?
Yeah, good. It's good to see you. Um, yeah, so we could kind of, take this interview like, I mean, this podcast, I guess, like, and anywhere we want, really.
Okay.
Well, first off, I guess, can you describe what your art is like and what it deals with, like the subject matter and things like that?
Okay. So basically, I see myself as a teacher. That's my main job. That's how I pay the bills. Um, I I like to dabble. I like to play in the art realm. I don't always like start off by introducing myself as an artist um, because I have because of the way teaching works for me, it pays the bills, so that gives me a lot of freedom that like a real artist might not have. And so like I don't always identify myself as an artist for that reason. Um, I like to I guess to explain it, I really kind of need to start early. Like I've always been drawn to like um, I don't want to say whimsical, but the kind of playfulness of art. I grew up copying comic books and trying to emulate comic book artists. I'm a huge fan of cartoons. I watched cartoons well up into the time period where I probably shouldn't be watching cartoons. Um, and I still love it. Like anytime I have an opportunity to watch something animated, I probably will. And that's always influenced my art. I remember, you know, at like, that kind of when you're trying to find yourself in high school and junior high, really wanting to emulate like, what was cool and be on scary note. At the time, I think 18 years old, my favorite artist was H.R. Giger, and I wanted to be scary, and I wanted to be this kind of persona that I was still trying to find myself. And I'll never forget, I did a piece based on a, a, a sculpture that I had seen at a museum of Satan, and I was mixing in my influences with like, at the time I was watching the cartoon Pirates of Dark Water, which I highly recommend to anybody who hasn't seen it. It was a very ahead of its time cartoon. I think it was one of the first cartoons that was actually like using fake cussing. They had all these like
Mm.
fake cuss words in it. And I love that cartoon. At the time I was 17, 18 years old.
Yeah,
And
I
I
never
remember,
seen it, but yeah, I should get it a shot.
oh, it's a good one. It's all, space pirate kind of concept, hunting the world, trying to save the world from like this weird dark water pollution. And they had great cuss words like "boy, you taught," and it was stuff that my friends and I that would watch it. We'd always like, at school when we weren't allowed to cuss, we would use our fake dark parts of dark water cuss words. Um, but again, it was so I was trying to like emulate all these things, and so there was a character in there that was a monkey bird, which was like part parrot, part monkey, and so I took like those two things and put them together. And I remember, getting done with it and being really stoked on the process. And in my head, I was, emulating the dark elements of art that I appreciated at the time. Like I was watching, Chet Zars and Adam Jones had and Cam DeLeon had done, all the Tool videos, which were very new right then. And so like I was, watching those kinds of things, looking at H.R. Giger's work, and I remember my friend standing over me as I'm finishing this like sculpture of this like red monkey bird, Satan demon kind of thing that I was working on, and he's like, you're you're a lot more HR Puff and stuff than you are HR Geiger. And you know, at the time it was really hurtful for me because I was like, this is I'm an edgy, scary artist. But it forced me to realize that like I think my strengths at the time were very playful. You know, I'm good at certain things and by nature. And so and so through college, a lot of my college experience was exploring like the funner side of me, like exploring puns, exploring cartoons, exploring caricature, um, getting to know my strengths. And so, and so I think
Mhm.
through college, I kind of developed myself as a character artist, as someone who plays, you know. And so when I think about the artwork that I do, it's very tongue in cheek, very pun based. I call myself, you know, when I was trying to think of like what category do I fit in, because I'm not a surrealist. Um, I'm not a character artist. I'm not into really realism, though I do some realism. I think I consider myself a nostalgic for realist with a narrative tendencies. That's how I always define my work, because I do draw
Did,
on my
did, did,
past a lot.
did you say nostalgic surrealist?
No, for realist,
For
because
realist?
I'm for realist. It's a word I made
Okay.
up. It's like because and again, you know, this is the neat part I think about being a teacher is that my whereas like a lot of the feedback that you know real artists get come from like a gallery, come from their interactions with other artists. I live in a small town. There's not like a huge art scene here, though. I think sometimes there's some good budding development in art scenes, but but it's not like LA, you know, LA or New York or some of those other like big areas with a high population of artists where you know you could find artists that have a similar style or show work that's close to you. So a lot of the feedback that I get comes from high school students, you know. And
Mhm.
so a number of years ago, we were talking about different art movements and some kid goes, you know, your art's not realist. And I'm all, yeah. He's all, but it's kind of like you're like a for realist because you're trying to be for real. And I always like that term, so I stole it from him. So anyway, my artwork is really playful, I think. And so, and because of the fact that I don't have to support myself with it, I'm able to like dabble here and there and experiment. Currently, and I want to be totally honest too. Right now, I'm in a real slump. Like I'm just having a really hard time, and I don't want to say it's an artist block because I'm not at a deficit for ideas. I got a whole bunch of ideas of things I want to do. I just lacking the motivation to do it. And I think right now, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot kind of happening.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know, the COVID put me behind, mainly not. I think COVID was really hard for me because I've never had so much downtime, and I at the same time I wasn't really able to do much because I was dealing with carpal tunnel at the time, and so like I'd have all this time to just sit and want to work, but I couldn't, and so that was kind of very. I I want to downplay it and say that you know I want to say COVID didn't affect me very much, but I have to look at it like psychologically. I think that did take its toll because
Mhm.
I wasn't able to work and I was very frustrated with what was happening. Um, and so that put me behind. And then coming out of COVID, rediscovering how to teach was a brand new thing too, because everything changed after that. You know, I changed my teaching style, the technology that I was using. Um, Also, our students that came back were different, so we had to kind of adjust to that. And I feel like every time I've kind of got a grip on something, something new's come on my plate, and and I don't want to make an
Yeah.
excuse that those are the only reasons, but I think this the kind of building of it has kind of slowed me down. Um, and you know, I know there's things I need to do. It's just right now the motivation to get those done has been really difficult. So right now I'm playing around with little things like I'm teaching. I switched also from teaching sculpture, which gave me a lot of opportunity to sculpt, to doing pottery. And I'm still kind of like identifying, like I feel like I really understand the classes I'm teaching,
Mm,
but like this year I've shifted to mentoring another teacher to work with her on that stuff, and so um,
mm,
that's kind of not put me behind, but it's kind of changed my focus.
yeah.
So I feel like I'm getting back into being an artist, not a real artist. I think because this isn't something that I have to pay the bills with. But getting back to playing, I'm starting to get back into playing, I guess is what I want to say, and enjoying like the art form, And I think that's when I talk to students and I talk to young artists about what to find. I think you have to always find the balance of like what do you want to do, like
Mm,
where do you want to put your energy? Like, if you want to be an artist as a profession, then you really have to realize that a lot of your energy is going to be out there hustling. You have to find the market. You have to brand yourself. You have to continually promote yourself. If you want to find the artistic ability to do what you want, to be, making the kind of art that you want, then you need to find somebody that can do those things for you.
mm.
Or you need to find a job that will support you while you explore those kinds of things. And there's a lot of great examples. I think, one of the beautiful things about social media is that you get also a little look into some of your heroes. Like I had no idea what any artist was doing on a daily when I was young. But now you get to see that artist, you get to hear them talk about their struggles, you get to see all the other jobs they're doing, and so I think that really kind of helps open up the understanding of like what the life is like.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, that is like a yeah, huge thing. Yeah, now that I think about it, about like yeah, you could see what they're doing on a daily basis. Um, yeah, but uh, sort of like to put a framework on this, like when you're talking about high school, like that was like early 90s, would you say?
Yeah, it was I was high school from let's see, 90 to 93. Those were so
Nice.
I guess 89 to 93 was my high school.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I mean I have a there's a few things floating in my head, but well, I guess rotate around. But uh um well, actually, first off, like how's your hands now? Yeah.
They're really good. I I mean I still like when it's cold. I
Mm,
feel a little bit, or if I overwork, like if I'm really doing something like if I'm doing a large bust and there's a lot of digging and wedging and stuff like that with the clay, I'll feel it a little bit, not as bad as nowhere as bad as when I during COVID. That was horrible, and
mm,
a lot of it was my fault. Like I was really scared of being of getting a diagnosis of carpal tunnel because I was so scared of it that I didn't do any research. I just knew carpal tunnel meant, I said, you see the people at the store and they're wearing their braces for carpal tunnel. Um, to me,
mm,
I saw carpal tunnel as like, that's a game changer. It's going to stop me from doing anything. And so instead of facing it head on, instead of like doing research and finding out what that entailed, I just kind of like denied it, and I did other things. Like I was going to a masseuse to get massages because someone had told me that they had something similar, but it was an ulnar nerve, and so all they had to do was get the ulnar nerve relaxed, and then everything would go away. And
mm,
so I was doing a lot of focus on ulnar nerve. I was doing like exercises to try and get rid of it. And sometimes it would go away, but it got to the point where like I was waking up in the middle of the night with like what felt like lightning through my hands, and I
uh,
couldn't lay down. I would sleep sitting up on a couch, trying to like, and it got to the point where I was like, I just need to go see a doctor. And I went in to see the doctor, full of denial. I was telling him, oh, I think it's this, I think it's this, and the doctor's like, you have carpal tunnel, just straight out. And so I went and did the test. I went and saw a physical therapist. They were trying to get me ready for it, and and it took forever because the minute I was supposed to get my surgery, everything shut down, everything stopped. And so I had to live with it a lot longer than I needed to. And and I remember getting the surgery, waking up from the surgery, and them giving me all these, painkillers. Like, okay, here you're gonna need these painkillers for the pain, and thinking this pain is nothing compared to what I was dealing with. So I mean, I didn't even end up taking any painkillers because the pain had decreased so much with carpal tunnel. So, for
Oh,
those
dang.
artists out there that might be listening to this and thinking that they have carpal tunnel, get it checked out because it did take me about a year to recuperate. I imagine though that probably would have been less had I not waited so long. Uh, but uh, but I feel a lot better now. My hands are a
Oh,
lot better.
dang, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
year's good.
yeah, and I'm throwing pots like, a lot now for high school. Like I don't keep most of them because we're cutting them in half, or I'm destroying them to show kids what to do and what not to do.
Hmm.
But I use them every day and wedging or digging clay out of a bucket and stuff. And so that's, I mean, it's doable. Just face your
Yeah,
fears. I say that, knowing that I did not, but telling artists out there, face your fears and get things checked out as early as you can.
right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, uh, yeah, and also, that was a, ceramics, reference, but, um, for everyone listening. So how is it, does it affect your, like, sculpting abilities at all?
No, not it doesn't affect my sculpting ability. I think the biggest thing that's affected is just I was doing before COVID, before carpal tunnel really set in. I was doing a lot of work and I had a really good routine. And since then, I haven't been able to fall back into that routine. And again, I'm not blaming carpal tunnel or COVID for that. It's a motivation and it's a psychological. I haven't forced myself to do it, and it's something I need to do. But uh, but lately, it's just been so much stuff on my plate. I've been
Yeah,
tired
yeah.
to do it, and get into it. But yeah, no, I mean, I'd say I'm back to like 98% being able to do whatever I need to do. It's just motivating myself to do it has been difficult.
Yeah, 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 I could imagine, yeah. Yeah, uh, yeah, so you mentioned, H.R. Giger, was big influence, I guess, at least when you were younger. Uh, why was that? Or, like, what attracted you to H.R. Giger?
I think at the time I was 18 years old. There was a lot of like rebellion in me. Like I was listening to like a lot of punk rock, things that were like not taboo, but we're just pushing, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, and I liked, his artwork was edgy. It was scary. There were a lot of like, inappropriate, let's say, for a young person, tones in there. Um, so those kinds of things were exciting to me and I think drew it to me. But at the same time, like I was still watching. I think at the time my favorite movie, well, the movies I watched a lot were like, I'm still watching Watership Down like
Mm,
every couple months. I was watching, things like Pirates of Dark Water. So there was still a lot of playful stuff. It was just like H.R. Giger was one of the artists that I recognized. And I think also
mm,
the problem was there wasn't a lot of exposure. Like that was an artist at the time, you know, in school, all we learned about was like, Van Gogh or Dali, or there was like these artists that were appropriate or that were, based in art history and those were the books we had, the books that talked about them.
yeah.
And so like I had, those artists. I had comic book artists that I could look at, but I wasn't also real savvy. Like I read comic books, but not in a way that like you talk about like and I say this lovingly, like a comic book nerd would know. Like they know like who's writing, who's drawing, who's um, what what direction they're going, what other books they've done. And at the time, I was just buying comic books because I liked the artwork, or I liked like I'd buy stuff based on the character, you know, and so I didn't memorize names. I wasn't like a collector. I was more just like the guy that bought something that looked cool and drew all the pictures out of it. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't spending my allowance every month to make sure that I had that when it was like picking up the article or the books that looked cool to me, and I enjoyed it. And it wasn't until I got into college and had a roommate that was that guy that was giving me comics and saying, "You need to read this one. You need to follow this writer, this artist." It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until then that I started actually like I'd say collecting comics. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, Giger stood up because he was the easiest one. Like there were documentaries on him. They talked about him. He was, Aliens was one of those early early horror movies that I remember being afraid of, not even knowing anything about it, but then later watching it and being like, oh my gosh, I love this. This is so cool. Um, I remember I had an alien Halloween costume, I think in like the fourth grade, and I had no idea what it was. I just went to I mean, I went, that was one of I think there was like maybe four store-bought costumes I had as a child, and the alien costume was one of them. And I remember getting it and being excited because I had a pair of black gloves that I could, and it was like not great black gloves, like just knitted black gloves that I could wear with this black alien costume. And I had no idea who aliens were or any of that stuff. I just wanted that costume for that reason because it was like it matched my black gloves and it was scary for a
Mm-hmm.
third grader or whatever grade it was that I was in at the time. So I think that's
Yeah.
why Giger was so influential to me at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because well, yeah, I mean, his medium is airbrushing, I guess. So,
Yeah.
uh, did that ever interest you?
Um, I did. Well, I started off with drawing, but
Mm-hmm.
not drawing like I wouldn't say I was good at drawing. I could. I had a good understanding of anatomy as far as comic book anatomy. I wasn't great at drawing realism. I could copy really well, and so that was the push. I didn't get into like three-dimensional stuff until high school, and I started dabbling at the end of high school with sculpture. And I think my progression came because I played water polo, and all the boys on water polo took ceramics. It was like, you got out of PE, you take ceramics sixth period because that was the class that was pretty easy to make up if you missed, because we missed a lot of class for the sport. Um, and so I took ceramics for that reason, and I just fell in love with it. Like it was like the best thing for me. It was almost like a meditation because you get in there, you get that wheel spinning, and I put my headphones on, had my like Henry Rollins at the time was like my guy, so I'd be listening to End of Silence and just focused on making this mushy piece of earth into like something. And I really love that part of it. But I think by the time I was a senior, I don't want to say I got bored with it, but I felt like a bowl wasn't enough. Like it needed to have something to it. And so I was doing things like making a donut pot where you throw the walls and then create a second set of walls. The inside would be hollow and connecting it, so you'd have this like donut form. And then
Mm-hmm.
seeing what I could do with like, can I turn it into a dragon? Could I turn it into a canteen? At the time, there were a lot of students that were making like drug paraphernalia that the teacher would like he'd always break it or throw it away. And so a lot of times he would say like, "Oh, I found this bong. I took it away from a kid. Do you want to see what you could turn it into?" And so I was taking like the bongs that they would make and turn it into like a dragon that smoked incense, or I made a large it wasn't anybody, it was mine, but I threw like a large bottle, and that's what was the basis for that gargoyle I referenced earlier,
Mm-hmm.
the monkey bird demon thing that I made. And so I started really enjoying that, and he had me sculpt a skull using a skull reference, and I liked those things. I made a giant Henry Rollins, like the search and destroy from the back of his back tattoo. I sculpted
Oh
that
yeah.
out. and
mm,
I really enjoyed those parts of it. So when I went to college, I was really interested in focusing on like pottery and sculpture. But unfortunately, when I got to college, Santa Cruz made a huge shift from uh, craft art to conceptual art. And so, like, when I took my tour of Santa Cruz, they had all these like amazing ceramic sculptures and pottery. And by the time I was actually in the classes,
mm,
they had pushed like to the point where we weren't making pottery anymore because pottery was considered a craft and we were doing only sculpture. And my frustration came because, again, I was like watching cartoons. I wanted to sculpt monsters. I wanted to make, at the time, kind of scary stuff. I was reading like books like The Metamorphosis, Animal Farm, and so those were the kind of characters I wanted to explore. But my teachers were pushing towards like um, protest art, um, gender art, political statements. And so, like,
mm,
that
mm.
was for me very defining on who I am as an artist. At the time, it was very frustrating. It's funny because it's the stuff that you hate is the stuff that I think you miss when you get away from it. Like I miss I've never been a political artist, but I did love the fighting against the establishment that was that were my professors, pushing like boundaries and seeing what I could get away with. I missed that part of
Mm, mm.
school, you know.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah,
Mm. So,
but college was really what exposed me to a lot more artists, because my
mm,
teachers were forcing me to like they're okay, Giger or whatever, find more artists. And so I had to go out and dig through the library, and that's when I found artists like David Gilhooly, who was doing a lot of, and I think I don't like his work. I'm not like, oh, I need to have a David Gilhooly, but like he showed me that you could be funny and be stupid and still be taken as a real artist.
mm,
Because he was doing like all these like frogs as, portraitures, frogs as food. He was doing a lot of food in ceramics. He was doing a lot of like tongue-in-cheek type work, puns. And then, he led me to Robert Arneson's work. And Robert Arneson was very similar, doing some semi-realistic, um, surrealist kind of stuff. Again, he has actually a sculpture called Tongue in Cheek. Um, he was playing around with a lot of like interesting issues. And so like I think it
mm,
was
mm.
those two artists, and then again Peter Volkis as a ceramicist who was doing really, I don't want to say ugly, but he was really pushing the idea of aesthetics, like what could be considered pretty in pottery. And so I think like those three artists showed me that there were other ways, that there were other ways to push yourself into something else. And there
Yeah.
was other, but there was I think when it comes to when I talked about like when I think about my arc as an artist or the things I've been into, I think at a young age I was really opposed to like to finding artists because I looked at it as such an academic thing. Like in school we learn art history, but the art history doesn't always relate to us. Um, and so I was kind of opposed to that as a young person, and I was trying to find my own thing, and thinking that I had to kind of develop something out of nothing, uh,
Yeah.
and not realizing that the things that were influencing me, those things are art, but instead looking at it like I just like to read comic books and not thinking like I enjoy the comic book art form. I like to watch cartoons, not thinking like um, I enjoy cartooning as an art form. That's always something as a teacher I've tried to instill with kids is that like you think beyond your culture. Like um, you could be Mexican, you could be black, you could be white, you can be Asian. Like those are part of you, but that's not your only culture. Your culture is so much more. Like it's all the things that you're exposed to because culture is constantly evolving. And so like taking pieces of all of that is what really makes you interesting. And so like I think it took me till after college to start to realize that 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 artists are important because they influence and inspire us, but that they don't have to be in a book. They don't have to be in a gallery to do that. And I think that again, I see the dangers of social media, but at the same time, I think like social media has done so much for me, as it exposing me and inspiring me and giving me a community. I look at all the guys that work and ladies, the people that work with Plastic Cell and do like the competitions and share their work and communicate. And I think like those kinds of companies, those kinds of people putting their work out there,
Yeah.
are doing a lot for creating the new culture of what art is. You know, they're the Andy Warhols right now and creating like the studio spaces for what's to come, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of neat to see all of that. No, and I think about like
Mm.
what you're doing right now, Pat, too. Like, it's kind of neat your podcast, the things that you're doing with the podcast, like the fact that you're introducing a lot of young listeners or even older listeners to opportunities that they wouldn't have. Like you're showing them artists and letting those artists talk to them because like nobody wants to like nobody's out there avidly searching to see what Gorilla has to say, you know, or Sean Regalado has to say. But you're giving that opportunity to people.
Mm.
Uh, you know, like some of the directors that you talk to, the musicians that you talk to, like they're not at the front of everything, but like once you get to hear their story, you realize like how much of your world uh, is influenced by it. And so I think like that's the neat part of what you're doing, you know, as a podcaster. And in a
Mm.
way, you know, I've done little bits of that, but I'm envious that you've turned this into such a great medium for you. You know,
Oh,
it's neat.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, really appreciate it. So with saying like that you knew a lot about the forms and things of comic book art. Um, how uh I guess how did you get used to that, or how did you kind of envelop that in your own kind of thing? Was it just copying other comics or?
Oh yeah, it was straight copy.
Mm,
Um, and I lacked a lot of foundational art. I think I had good art teachers in high school. They were very motivational and inspirational. Um, and a lot of it was me. I avoided like doing the work of sitting down and learning proportion, of sitting down and learning musculature. And for me, I don't know that I would even have made a difference. I think I would have just gotten frustrated and angry with it. Like the best thing has been for me is just cranking through. You know, like I don't learn from sitting down and studying. I learn from doing, reflecting, redoing. And
mm,
so like I think about like my sculpture was okay in high school. There's a lot of it that I'm really like I see it and I'm like, ooh, there's a piece I keep that I was really proud of when I made, and it was like this bust of a man, and he had corks in his ears, and he had stitching on his eyes, and he had stitching on his lips, um, and I think I can't even remember what I called it. It was something like being open, or you know, so I was like open to suggestion, but not really because I sealed up all of my intake. You know, like there was no way to get through to me, and I was really proud of it. Oh, actually, I think the mouth was open. Like, so my eyes were closed, my ears were plugged, but I could still talk. So it's like I'm
mm,
talking, but I'm not seeing, I'm not hearing. I'm just spouting. Was the kind of concept behind the piece. And I have to say, like, it was almost a direct ripoff of one of my other friends and what they were doing. I just took it into a 3D form,
mm,
which is, you know, something funny is like I get a lot of high school students that are like, this guy's copying me. And I'm always like, well, they copy him back when he's done. Like, that's the thing I love about art is like it's all like steal a little bit, give a little bit, take a little bit, share a bit. And I like that community part of the art world. And I'm always bummed when I get, you know, there's people are fighting over like who's ripped off who and who's not. Because I think about like you're missing
yeah.
opportunities. If they're ripping you off, then like start that dialogue and talk about it, and then see where you guys can go together because together maybe you become a super team of, you're the next art movement of whatever you guys are doing. So I like that element. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
getting back to it, I look at that sculpture and I look at some of the stuff I do now. Like I do a lot of work just with the BSU at our school. So every year for Black History Month, I sculpt something, whatever character or I'm sorry, character, but whatever historical figure they want. So like,
Mm,
I did a Black Panther last year. The year before that, I did Tupac. I'm really pushing them and telling them like I want them to do choose a woman because I'd like to sculpt a woman, but I'm doing bust. And I'm
mm,
not saying those are perfect, but those are getting they're a lot better simply because um, not because I studied faces, but because I've done so many portraitures since then. Like, the work I did on the plastic cell base. And I loved that base. It was so much fun. And it gave me a really quick outlet to make a lot of stuff. And every one of those that I did improved me. So like I think for me, studying wouldn't have like studying the human form at an academic level wouldn't have helped me. What helped me was producing work. And so I really encourage students and I encourage anybody out there, like if you want to do it, don't get frustrated because the first one you did didn't work. And I'm not saying go out and find a book and memorize that book. I'm saying have the resource there, create the piece, and then right after create another one, and then create another one, and create another one. And every time look at like what kind of things you could be doing better because it will happen. I think about all of and again, social media, I love it because there's a lot of people who've reached out over the years and said like, hey, I like what you're doing. I'm doing something similar. And I just watch them, I start following them and I start seeing them
yeah.
produce better and better and better stuff because they're doing it. They're out there making it, and so that's kind of a neat way to work. So for me, comic books was the gate into art, but production is what's gotten me better
Mm, mm, mm.
producing. And
Yeah.
this is inspiring me because I'm like realizing I just got to get it back out there and make some more stuff.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, um yeah, with your work, it's um well yeah, very playful as you described. Um like do you know where that might have came from? That like
Uh,
naturally going into that kind of playfulness?
I think it's just my personality.
Mm,
I'm not I'm not, let's say, an aggressive person. So I think um, I'm not usually it's funny, I listen to a lot of downer music, but that music doesn't ever bring me down, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
um it's funny, like I think that there's that personality that you have inside of you, and no matter what kind of like influence you get from the outside, it's always going to be there. And I think I've always been kind of like happy-go-lucky,
Mm,
easygoing. And so I think when I was fighting that and trying to be um, dark and mysterious and scary, it just wasn't like as hard as I was trying. That wasn't my core. My core is a little bit silly, is a little bit playful. And so once I embrace that and just go with it, um, it's I don't know. I'm a lot happier.
yeah.
I'm a lot prouder of the work that I do that's along those lines. I think, my artist name is Gorilla. That came from that realization for me of where I kind of fit in because in college I was asked to do all of this stuff like be political, do artwork that's changing the world and I was watching a lot of the artwork that was coming out of the school I was at. And I was kind of disappointed, like, the concept might be there, but the commitment to the piece wasn't there, or the execution wasn't there, or the technique wasn't there. And but yeah, at the same time, these artists that were showing, were talking about their work, were presenting themselves like they were something amazing, like they're somehow better than any of the people that were looking at the art. And I
Mm.
kind of felt like what we were doing, a monkey could do it. And so I did a whole series of things that were based on me as the artist. Because I'm not saying like every artist is a monkey, but I kind of was like, look, I'm doing this, but a monkey could really be taking my place. And I'm not doing it because I'm going to be able to change the world. I'm not doing it because my voice is louder or stronger or better than your voice. It was just like I'm just doing this for giggles. That's why I'm here is for S and G, and and
Yeah.
so like I started doing a whole bunch of monkey type things. And so when I graduated, I was like done. I was like, I don't want to do artists. I don't like other artists. I don't like the art world. And so I was just teaching and I was just doing the things that I love, like showing students how to make, at the time, pottery and then how to make sculptures. And then I started to see like there were at that time there was a huge boom. This is like 97. So there's a huge boom in like in
Mm.
I don't like the term, but outsider art was huge at the time. So like graffiti started becoming a real artistic process. Tattooing started to become acceptable and an artistic process. And then magazines like Juxtapose, High Fructose, like those started showing up and presenting us with like a whole bunch of new things. Like toys were becoming like cool, which I'd
Yeah.
always collected toys, but they were like, you know, Star Wars and X-Men and weird action figures that nobody had heard of. And so I'd collect the ones I liked, but then all of a sudden now there's artists that are like, this is a collectible toy. It's worth, $100. And I was watching them and going, wow, this is beautiful. And social media started up, not the social media that we have today, but like some of my favorite, I started going to conventions like Comic-Con. It started to become big like in the late 90s.
Mm.
And it had always been there, but it became like a thing to do. And I had a lot of friends at the time who were living in San Diego. And so we would go down and you'd work 2 hours and they'd let you in for free. And so
Mm.
we would go do that for Comic Con. And so I found people like the Schipple brothers that were doing amazing sculptures in materials that I'd never even heard of before. I only knew ceramics and bronze, and here they're using Sculpey. And I was like, this is amazing. And you could bake it in your oven. That means like you don't even have to have a studio. So
Yeah.
so I started like, getting into the social media aspect of like they had a forum where people were posting artwork and talking about their artwork. And so um, and I'm finding all these graffiti artists that have, they're presenting their work and so this whole like new art form started
Mm.
happening that I was just in love with. Like the idea that you could show work under an assumed name was amazing to me. It's like artists went from being pretentious, um, I don't know, pretentious jerks to like superheroes. Like, I was following people like Woes, who at the time was Angry Wobots. He had a crew called Pocket Full of Monsters, and I was like, this is so cool that they're like a superhero. Like they have a secret identity, they have a code name, they have all this stuff. And then the
Mm.
Shivel brothers, you were putting your work out there, but nobody was using their real name. And so, again, puns have always been really fun for me. So I thought I'm going to be I'm going to be a simian. I'm going to be some kind of monkey. And then I thought, why don't I be Gore, the gore, like gory, but illa, gorilla. And I was like playing around with a bunch of sculptures of like uh, Frankenstein gorillas because it kind of meshed a lot of the stuff that I love. Like I love horror movies. I love the comic book aspect of it. I like the superhero name. All that stuff worked together. And so like things that the
Yeah.
teacher and the son of two educators couldn't always do. The gorilla could. The gorilla could put whatever he wanted out there, and nobody asked why. Why are you doing this? They just assumed like that's what the gorilla does, and so I liked that element of it, and that was exciting to see that happening, and also to have now a community who accepted you because you fit into their narrative. You had an artist name that was easy to remember because Regalado, who could spell that? That wasn't when you're searching for somebody online. It's hard to find Regalado, but like Goreilla was easy. That's an easy one to find.
Yeah, yeah.
And relatable too, because you don't need to know any of his backstory. He is like he's whatever he puts up there, and that was kind of cool. And so that it was neat to find all these other artists that were doing creating their own narratives, creating work that had a fun theme to it, and not doing it like. And the other thing I loved about it at the same time was like I went from my painting teacher was known for painting large realistic paintings of clouds. Like that's what he did. And
Mm,
I remember asking him like, "Hey, show me how you do the clouds. Like, I really like." And he's like, "That's my thing. You go find your thing." And going from that to online a stranger and being like, "Dude, how are you doing this?" And they're like, "Oh, it's easy. Watch this tutorial." Or even like not even asking, they just offering it up. Like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm making these cool things. Come watch my live feed or follow my tutorial and you could do it too. Or I'm going to be at this convention sculpting the whole time and I could go sit and for like a couple hours watch this person make something that I had no idea even existed before. Like, but yet they were willing to share. And so I think that
Mm,
that was the game changer for me is the fact that art wasn't gate kept anymore. It wasn't um about who the best artist was. It wasn't so much about like pay me a lot of money for this. It was more about this like I'm gonna do this. I want to share this with people, and 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 I'm just like you. Like that was the biggest shock for me was that like meeting, and I think you went with me to one of the designer cons, and like we got to sit and talk to Chet Zar. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
dude, Chet Zar was like, I mean, the Tool videos, all of the special effects movies that he's done over the years, his paintings are amazing, and yet he's there by himself in his booth
Yeah.
sharing his stuff. And you could go up to him and say, like, dude, you're so awesome. And he's like, thanks. Not like, yeah, I am awesome, or like start spouting off things that you couldn't understand. Chet was just like, wow, thanks. That's cool. You could like his stuff on Instagram and he would be like, thanks, man. Like that
Yeah.
that was so inspiring for me. Like the fact that you could find heroes
Yeah.
that were obtainable, and I think the other thing I really like about your podcast is that you're presenting a bunch of people that like, you listen to their music or you watch their movies, um,
Mm,
and yet they're so willing to share all this information with the world, and not in a pretentious way, but in a very like realistic, um,
yeah.
personable way is like so cool. Um,
Mm.
because I think too many heroes are up on a pedestal and unreachable, and I think that's really too bad. It's neat to see some of the people that you've interviewed, and how down to earth and how giving they are. That's so awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, it definitely is like really cool. I mean, this is my own kind of school, I feel like. But yeah, so it's nice because I feel like I mean, I definitely learn something every podcast from them. But yeah, yeah, I was just gonna get something from the time because I forgot I had something from that Chetzar booth. Um
Really.
yeah,
Well, and he's one that's still doing it. Like he continues to offer a lot. He does a lot of painting demos or painting classes that are offered up that are really cool.
no, I remember yeah, because it's funny because yeah, when I first came over, I was like didn't know what to say or whatever. I just said like hi and things like that, and then he gave me a card and he signed it.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. That was like my first experience, like I guess talking to somebody I respected. Yeah, that was cool. Um, but or that I appreciated, or artistically and stuff. But um, yeah. So that was your first time too, like meeting him.
Yeah,
Oh,
uh I think that was the first time I'd ever talked to him. I think I'd been in, not in shows, but I've gone to shows that he had done. I think when your aunt lived out in Santa Monica, I think we went to the CoPro gallery a couple times before that. And so I'd seen his work or been at an opening where he was at. Um, but
yeah.
I think that was the first time I ever talked to him.
Yeah. Because I think he only did that one design con, I think.
No,
Right.
I think he's in a couple.
Oh, okay.
But but I know he does a lot of Monster Palooza. I think I want to say that was one of his bigger ones. And then
Yeah.
he's done a bunch of like painting demos at different, like a lot of tattoo parlors or artist studios that are really cool. Um,
Yeah.
and it's neat because he has such a specific style. It's so cool that he's willing to share that style with other people. Because a lot of artists are afraid, like, you know, if people paint like me, then I won't be special anymore. But it's neat to see that people offer things up. And for me, I want to say that college gave me a lot of opportunities, like the degree did. But it wasn't until I started taking classes outside of college that that I really kind of found my style, my voice.
Yeah.
For me, I remember like it was college and then teaching, and then I want to say like 3 or 4 years into teaching that I took a class with Jordu Shell, and like that totally changed everything for me. Like um, his
Mm.
critiques were rough, but uh, one of those ones where I drive home like a little tear in my eye because I got totally ripped up. But at the same time, once I had a chance to like digest what he said, changed everything. And I think he's another one um, who changed how I did art, and allowed me to embrace more stuff. Because when I took his class the first time, and uh, and I don't know if other artists have this or other young people or anybody that does stuff. Um, I have narratives while I work that I think about. So like I have like always there's always the narrative of like whatever I'm sculpting, I'm having a conversation with that thing. And I'm like, what kind of things do you like to eat, or like what music do you listen to as I'm creating something? Because I'm trying to understand the character that I'm building. So there's that narrative. But then there's also the narrative that runs in my head where, and I mean, I don't want this to sound, it probably will, but I don't want this to sound egotistical or whatever. But like, there's a fantasy.
Mm.
I might be sculpting an artist, as a study. But in my head, I'm like, maybe that artist is gonna like this, and it's gonna want me to like, it's gonna want to have this piece of artwork, and and then they're gonna want me to make their album cover, or like
Yeah.
someone's gonna see this and they're gonna offer me a job, and a lot of it's just fantasy. It's not real, but it's funny because I'll do that. And so like when I was working on Jordu's stuff, I really wanted him to like me as a student. I really wanted him to be like, yeah, this is one of my favorite students. And so everything he did, I was like, the minute we got done with that class, I would go home and work on it for hours. And I was one of the few people in those classes that finished it all the way through. And so like the first time I took it, I did the mask, I finished it, I sculpted it, I cast it, I painted it, and we got a critique, and I got a pretty good critique on that one. I was really happy with that critique. Then when we did the maquette part of it, because it was a two-part class, um,
Mm.
I did it all the way through. Like I listened to what he said, I tried things out that he suggested. I made this like it was like a creature from the Black Lagoon was the concept I was working on, but it was more of like an eel based, not like a fish based. And
Mm.
so and so I went out to the store and I bought weightlifting magazines, and I bought a swimmers magazine that had like swimmers in it. And so I was using all of this to sculpt the anatomy of this character and the pose, and everything was highly defined. And so when I got there and I was showing it for the critique, nobody else was finished. I was completely done. And I remember thinking like he's gonna be like, now see guys, this is, and he was gonna like talk me up and tell me how amazing it was. And the first thing he did was he's all, did this guy just do push-ups right before this? Like, how come every single muscle on his body is rippling? because again, I bought a weightlifter magazine,
Mm.
and I made sure like, and I think I was also using dynamic anatomy, the anatomy book. So every,
Mm.
there's no skin on those guys. They're all like full on every single muscle. And so I had it all defined. And I had veins, and because he'd given us a lecture on veins, so I had veins. I had made web hands using pantyhose. I mean, I used the Sculpey for the teeth, and the fingers was all translucent Sculpey. So I thought he was gonna
Mm.
hit on all of it. And instead he roasted me for a good like 5, 10 minutes about how buff my monster was. He's like, "Come on, give me a break. This this guy is like totally ripped. Like, how is he that ripped from?" And I was like, "Well, he's a swimmer." And he's like, "But your muscles aren't like that." Like, and I mean, it was a good critique with a lot of like roasting in it. Um, and again, driving home, I was like crushed, like just drive, and it was like an hour and a half drive, I think, for me, from Burbank to back to Redlands,
Mm.
and I mean, it was just like silence in the car, just driving, and like
Mm.
little tear running down my face, and just like, man, I got slapped down. But then
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
dwelled on it, and I thought about it, and I was like, he was right, and I started observing people, and realizing like nobody's perfect. And then I
Mm.
started appreciating that it's the weird things about us, like the pot belly, the love handles, the things that like we don't always accept as, we want to try and fix, but that's what like makes us unique. And so then I started embracing it to a point where probably it wasn't great because I was probably sitting in meetings with people and staring at them and going, dude, this person has the best nose. This person has the weirdest eyebrows I've ever seen. How can I attach that to one of my characters, And
Mm.
so,
Mm.
so those things were kind of fun. Um, but it was
Yeah.
the next time I took his class, and I embraced the idea of like chubbiness, and I had your aunt take all these pictures of me in my underwear, crouched over, and I just kind of like
Mm.
enjoyed like the chubby parts of me. And so the piece was about this angel perched, but he wasn't like a traditional angel. He was um, monstrous, kind of. And so I used like a beluga whale face for the head.
Mm.
Um, he only had 3 digits because I enjoy three. The number three works really well for a lot of things I like to do. He again had translucent fingernails. Um, I never got to the wing parts, but I wanted him to have these kind of weird butterfly wings.
Mm.
Um, but I had him perched, and it was really fun. And like he had a belly, and he had love handles, and he had wrinkles, and he was chubby. And Jordy was like, "This is a great piece." He's all, "I can identify with this." He talked to me a lot about like how fun it was, and that he was albino, so like I had like the
Mm.
skin was I tried to use some of his translucent painting techniques, and it was through that I was like, and then I went home empty on that one. That was the best drive home because I
Mm.
had gotten this really good critique where he was like, you learned from the last one, and here's what came out, and so that for me was the realization of, and it that was I think my breaking point from comic books, and not like I got rid of comic books, but
Yeah.
I quit trying to recreate, uh, Superman and Wolverine and all of these characters, and I started just accepting and looking out, and instead making like, you know, that guy at the grocery store and trying to bring him into like, you know, I did a rhinoceros right after that. That was like I think he was wearing a green shirt that said stud on it, and he was chubby, but he was happy, and so that kind of like that change in my outlook of like trying to create perfection and instead embracing the oddity of the natural world and what makes us us. That was the game changer for me for making projects, and I try and always embrace that going forward, and I tell my students one of the reasons I like doing zombie stuff is because zombies, when I sculpt a zombie, I try and make great sculpture. And
Mm.
then every part that I don't like, I I take a bite out of, I scratch, and so the fun part about doing a zombie is
Mm.
you try and make something good, and then you exploit all of the mistakes you made and turn them um, into gore. And so I think that's almost like a metaphor for the way I work. Um,
Mm-mm.
you shoot for perfection, but you enjoy every mistake that goes through you, and every mistake that you encounter, and try and make the best of it all. Um, so, so
Yeah.
if anybody out there like using this as a tutorial for art, I don't recommend that, but at the same time, like that's something to keep in mind. Embrace your mistakes. Um, Scotty Young, I've been watching a lot of Scotty Young lately.
Mm.
He does these great tutorials or like morning scribbles, and he'll talk through them. But he talks about finding your style as, embracing the things that make you you by accepting the the non-perfect parts of your action,
Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, I had this. I mean, I've always kind of had this like thought. I mean, I don't know, like what you think about this, but that your work, like, is similar to Guillermo del Toro, the filmmaker, but like in that like I always like thought like not maybe not like stylistically or anything like that, but like um that feeling of like because his movies are very his movies are very like uh there's kind of like a heartfelt softness to it to a lot of
yeah.
his movies. Yeah, and like so actually wanted to ask you just because lately it's been like one of my favorite things to watch is his Pinocchio movie on Netflix. Yeah,
No,
did you watch
that
that?
was amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. Yeah, and I've been waiting for that film for like, oh man, was it 15 years, I think?
Oh.
Because Bruce Grimley, who's one of my favorite illustrators, he did the designs for, and he was, I have the novel. He did illustrations for the Pinocchio novel, which
Hmm.
I believe inspired Del Toro to want to do the project. And I don't know the timeline for that, but I know Chris Grimley was big on that project because he was promoting it. I was super excited for it, and then there was like that moment where Chris is like, "Ah, it's not going to happen. We're not going to make this movie." But I like the way that both of those artists. I do like the way. Um, I like two things about them that I think it makes their stuff great. One, that they're fans of the medium, and because they're fans of the medium, they have this like, I'm going to stay true to what's important to me. There's a lot of artists out there that have their kind of own. Um, they get in their way, I want to say, because they're like, I'm the property. I'm the thing that's like important about this. That my name is tied to this.
Yeah.
And so like I've seen like I think a lot of like the new superhero stuff that's coming out. I enjoy it, but I don't find that they love the source material as much as they kind of like love themselves and what they can provide to it.
Yeah.
Whereas like people like Chris Grimley, like James Gunn, like Guillermo del Toro love the material
Yeah.
and they want to celebrate that material. At the same time,
Yeah, and
willing to put a little bit of,
yeah, sorry, no,
go ahead.
I was just gonna add it. Yeah, and you can feel it in the movie too, in the work.
Yeah, you feel it in the movie, but also because they want to put their mark on it. They want to add a little bit of their own flair to it, but not at the cost of losing the original intention of what it is. And I think that's the neatest part is when you love the source material that much. I'm really flattered that you would say that I was similar to Del Toro, but I think what you see the commonality between the two of us is that um, he makes a horror movie, and this is what like I get a lot of students that be like, "Have you seen Saw or have you seen this?" And I don't enjoy those horror
Yeah.
movies as much because to me it's like you have a killer, but you don't identify with the monster. Um,
Right.
I don't want a villain. I like Dracula or I like vampires because there's like that torn like they do what they do because they have to. Like that is their, you know, their life. Like they suck blood. They kill
Yes.
people because that's how they have to live. Um, I like the idea that some of them still have the humanity they had as a person. Um, so like the vampires are like I love watching vampire movies. I love watching werewolf movies because there's this whole thing of like I'm not a bad person. This is something that happens to me, once a month. I have, I try and deal with it, but like it's now my nature. I love that part of it. And I think like when I watch a Del Toro film, he doesn't he doesn't give us a monster to hate. He
Yeah.
shows us something scary to love. And I think like that's where every time I create something, um, and here's where again we go into that believability um, uh, concept or the for real concept. It's like
Mm.
I don't expect you to take what I sculpt as real, but I want to give it some kind of trait, some kind of opening for the viewer, so that the viewer might look at it and go, "That's there's no way that's real." But at the same time, going, "But wouldn't it be awesome if it could be?" Like that's what I want. And I think like when I watch a Del Toro film, that's what I love is like, some of my favorite films, like
Yeah.
by the end of the film, you kind of overcome the fear of the horror movie. And now
Right.
you are like almost rooting sometimes for the monster. I'm really excited to see what he does with Frankenstein.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
um,
yeah.
but you look at like Kronos, where it's like, here's a vampire movie, but the vampire is this old man who's like thrust into the situation and and in the end has to protect his granddaughter. And so everything he's doing is like a sacrifice for them. Like that's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Um,
I
even
just
Pan's Labyrinth,
mm,
there's all these like scary elements to it, but it's really what is a horror movie is really a fairy tale. And I think that's where Del Toro does really well. He's a great
yeah, for
storyteller.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like so just recently I did it was an art show that was based on a drone with the piece. And Nervous Wreck was the artist who created the drone, and so he sent these out. It's a really fun little character. It looks like a comma with three legs, and so here's I want to say here's one of the reasons I'm not a successful customizer for toys because that's something I enjoy doing. Is I like getting somebody's blank toy and playing with it. Um, every time I get one of those, I'm always torn between
Mm.
doing the toy exactly the way it is and just adding a small element to it, and then totally turning it on its head and doing something completely different. Um, and collectors want all of their toys to like have an artistic style, but then look a little bit different. And I think I kind of messed that parts up. But so for the last one I got, I was looking at this toy and I'm all, it's got this like when you look at it one way, it's kind of like a comma, but if you flip it over, it's like a booty. Like you have like
Mm.
the torso and this great butt of it. And
Yeah.
so I was like, well, what if I did as an insect? I was playing around with this idea as an insect. I wanted to get away from always doing, and I still really want to work on this. This is something that, you know, it's funny because kids talk about artist block. I've never had artist block because I've got a whole bunch of ideas of things I want to do. I just haven't found either the time or the motivation to get them done. So I've been wanting to do like small sculptures, but instead of like sculpting every element to it, I've been wanting to like play around with like felt, kind of like what your aunt and I did when she was Momo Designs, and she did a whole bunch of like she was doing her Girl Scouts and these really cute little dolls with really the neat part about those was all this
Yeah.
costuming that she was like creating all these like tiny pieces of clothing. So I really want to kind of emulate what she was doing, but like on a small scale with little monsters. And so I thought, well, this would be a great opportunity. So instead of sculpting on the form, I drilled holes in it and added like to build legs out, and I made a head out of Sculpey, and I wanted a spider because I wanted him to have all these arms, like so he's got I did three sets of arms and the two
Hmm.
legs. And so he evolved. Like originally he was going to be like a hipster. He was going to have headphones but like as I started using felt, it started taking on this like almost like a grandpa feel. Like the clothes were very wool. They looked like wool. So I was like, maybe he's not a hipster. Maybe he's like this old man. And then, once I opened up that avenue, like, and that again comes from like you're sculpting. I'm talking to the piece. I'm asking it like, based on like the materials I'm using or the gesture I've picked. It just started changing. And
Yeah.
so I started realizing like, oh my gosh, this is like a almost like a like he attends men's groups and so then I was like, if I do that, then I can add a fez and then it's like all these fun elements to it. So I was able to make a cane that he was hands were holding onto. He had hands hanging down and he had these hands up, and so it just kind of like evolved into this fun piece. And again, like at the show, it didn't sell because I think it was too far away from the base of the piece. But again, I still I still got to communicate with that artist. Like I still got to enjoy the beautiful form that he made. I still got to there was a bunch of my friends that were doing it, so we were communicating about what they were doing. I loved that element of it and seeing how they interpreted it. The community parts of the customization is what I love the most. Um, and again, also love the fact that like I got to do this process, which I think the important part for me is getting into a show not to be not for the notoriety, but for the deadlines. Like
Yeah.
I think sometimes I just need that deadline for the motivation. Like having a deadline that says that you got to get this done in this amount of time um, inspires me, and so I need that element of it. Um,
Yeah, it's helpful for
so
me too. Yeah.
yeah. What was that said though too? I also have like here's this piece that has been sitting on my desk for like
Hmm.
months because I was in
That's cool.
a competition that I never even got finished with. I've sculpted it, but I've never gotten around to doing it. And I've got a bunch of pieces like that where, like, I started, I love the idea, but like the final execution, I lose steam. And I'm working on trying to find a way to get that back.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I like the bonsais because those things call to me and say, hey, you gotta get out there and trim me because I'm getting overgrown. And I can't just be like, later, later, I gotta go out and take care of it before I kill it. So
Right,
so
right.
that's kind of the nice part about working in a plant.
Mm-mm. With well, I did read one article. And I couldn't help but look you up, and I read one article about you, and uh, like in it, you said that it's like you pick like a subject matter first, and then you pick the medium of like how you're gonna execute it.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just that. Um, I always like to get things ahead of time because I need to like live in it. I need to like I come up with an idea right off the bat for sure. Like I'm like, "Ooh, that's coming. Here's what I'm doing," and I'll start thinking about it. I think a good example was I was in an art show where they gave me, I think it's called Scully. It was like like a simplified skull form. It's just this round ball that looked like a skull, and I got it, and I was like, I'm gonna do like all these things, and then I just sit on all those ideas, and I'm big too, and like I'll be taking a shower, and in my head I'm like running through how I'm going to build it, and I'll draw, I'll watch movies, I'll collect resources like inspiration, and then I just have to sit down and start building. And so originally I thought about all these different like sugar skulls and things like that I could do with it, and then I thought. And I also like to do a lot of my research is like, especially on a toy that's been around. I'll go look and see what other people are doing and make sure that nobody's doing or has done something that I've done. or I plan to do. Um, I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of like maybe trauma I have from art school because I had a teacher who we would do stuff and she's all, you just reinvented the wheel because so and so did this, which
Mm.
was killer for us because we didn't have internet at the time. Internet had just come out, I think, when I was in college,
Mm.
or not just come out, but it just became like an accessible thing to people. And so like if I wanted to see if someone did something like what I was doing, I had to go look through books and books and books. And I was, 20 years old. I wasn't going to do that. I still wouldn't do that, but the internet's giving you that opportunity because you could type in a whole bunch of things into Google and see what's been done in that medium or with that subject matter or that particular base toy or whatever it is that you're doing. And so I do a lot of that. And when I researched on this toy,
Yeah.
um, not a lot of people had turned it into an actual full body toy. And so that became my goal was to turn it into a full body toy. And I thought, what's more what's more Scully than skateboarding, or punk culture. And so it started taking that kind of role. As I built the body, I started to realize like it's the same size as a tech deck. So I took apart a
Mm.
tech deck and added a tech deck to it. I was doing a lot of To Die For was a company, and they were nice enough to come out and talk to my students quite a bit. And we were silk screening shirts with the students, and so at the time I was like, they had this great graphic, and so I ended up using the graphic on my character because I thought that helped tell my story because now I've connected it to a company that I admired. So paid tribute to them a little bit. I was thinking about things that, I think I was listening to a little bit of some Black Flag and Minor Threat at the time, and that old school Vans is such like when you look at the Glenn Friedman pictures of Henry
Yeah.
Rollins or Nick Mackay, like they were almost always wearing like the old school Vans, all beat to hell, and so that came into that sculpture, and so like it's just I enjoy the organic process of design. Um, but not in a way that has to be rigid. I'm very organic. Like I just said, the the last piece I did, the arachnid, went from being like this young hipster who was kind of modeled after like the Miles Morales into this like old man Shriner type character.
Mm.
And so I always leave a little room to wiggle. The stuff I'm working on right now that I keep playing around with in my head is I want to still do, again, I always go back to monsters. After finishing your brother's cake topper, it really took me back to when your aunt and I did all of you guys as baby monsters because your mom was so mad at me calling you guys rabies. Uh, I want to go back to that kind of like fun monster, but like non-threatening. And so I've been thinking about playing with like the idea of my childhood. I was really big as a kid in One Monster After Another by Mercer Mayer and Maurice Sennex, Where the Wild Things Are. And so, like, I love the wild thing concept, but I was thinking more, I want to make a bunch of mild things. And so
Mm.
I'm still playing around with, like, I want to continue playing around with the felt and creating those characters. And then I also want to start doing, I've got a bunch of cone 10 porcelain. I think I want to make some small sculptures that I could start adding to my bonsai. So I'd have this like beautiful tree, and then underneath it might be like a little monster taking a nap, or a monster sitting on a tire swing from the branch, or like I want to incorporate more of the things that I
Yeah.
love together. I think for young artists, I think that's one of the hardest parts is that they have this like idea of what art has to be and not try and find a ways of bringing all of your loves together. They don't all have to be separate. Like, if you love music, it doesn't mean that your art can't have that music in it. And if you're into music, it can't mean that your art can't play a part in that music. And I think when I'm attracted to bands that embrace that concept, especially like, bands like the Gorillas, like where
Yeah.
you're pushing the medium by like bringing things you care about together and bringing people who may not fit but work well together. Like I always love that element of it. I think that when I look at Tool, that was the thing that attracted me to Tool wasn't so much the music, but the fact that here was this music that was so different, and then all of a sudden here are these videos that they were producing that were so different, and they're just
Yeah.
all they were doing was bringing, you know, uh, things that like Adam Jones loved, like his love of music and his friends in the industry of special effects, and just bringing those two things together to create something based on another artist's work. Like, those are highly influenced by the Brothers Quay. And so it was kind of neat to see all of that stuff. And then also the fact that when you do those things, you're not just giving people an artistic feel, you're also giving them this like weird history lesson because they're like, I love this. And you're like, well, I'm just taking little parts of these other things that are already out there. And now those people who were interested in mainly your music now have another avenue because that's how I did it. I went from like I love Tool, and then someone saying, well, oh, those are very similar to Brothers Quay, or reading an article I think where Adam Jones talking about the Brothers Quay, and um and then going out and finding the Brothers Quay, and then getting into their work and seeing what they were doing, and again just
Mm.
opening myself up to stop motion and what's out there, So that's always
Mm.
been kind of fun. So I think my process is based on play. I want to say that, and I know I've said that like a bunch this interview, but um, I do art because it is a plaything for me. It's like it's a lot of make believe. Um, it's it's an
Mm.
attachment to like my childhood because I'm bringing those narratives from childhood into my adulthood, but through a new lens. You're taking things that like these the Muppets or like Looney Tunes or all these things that were important to me as a child, and
Yeah.
then bringing them back. But they come with like a little bit of the childhood wonder, but a lot of the experience of being old and
Yeah.
and and mature. But then I think that's what those that like my work, I think that's what attracts them to it um, is that they get to enjoy the silliness, the narrative, the nostalgia of it. All of those things kind of like are there for them to kind of like explore, you know.
Mm. Mm.
And that's what I hope people see at least.
Yeah. Um, just this conversation I think is like opened me up to uh I guess on what your art is about. I guess we never really talked like so much about your
Yeah.
stuff, but so this was really nice. And yeah, I think this is a good place to stop, but I'll have you so I'll click off record, but I'll still have you on, so don't click out,
Okay.
Um and yeah, and so I wanted to ask you as a final question, what since we're in the Halloween season and we talked a lot about monsters and stuff, is there a movie you would recommend for like a horror
Oh,
movie or
somebody just turned me on to Sinners. Have you watched that one?
no, no. I wanted to.
Oh, I loved it. Like, it was that. And again, I haven't. I Queen just watched The Conjuring, the new one. So I think we're gonna watch that. We watched La Llorona the other day. I was been rewatching Penny Dreadful. Those are all good, but
Mm,
Sinners just really got me. Like that was fun,
mm,
and it hasn't been like I think it's a great movie for any artist out there, right? Or any artist, any person out there who has a loved one who's like, I don't want to watch a scary movie because I don't want to be scared, right? Sinners was great because it had drama in it. It
mm,
it wasn't too scary. Um, it is pretty graphic, but it wasn't like the kind of. There's not a lot of jump scares. I don't want to say. Um, It just had a really fun story, a really good retelling of a vampire movie. It reminds me a lot of one of my favorite um, vampire movies is 30 Days of Night, hands down. Like
mm,
that is one of the greatest vampire movies out there. It has that feeling because they have to survive the night. It all takes place in 2 days. Um, the person who recommended it to me referenced um, the Tarantino. Oh, why can't I think of it?
Like the
Uh,
Grindhouse, maybe?
no, his vampire movie with
Oh, from Dusk Till Dawn?
from Dusk Till Dawn. I couldn't remember the name, but yeah, Dusk Till Dawn. It does feel a little bit like Dusk Till Dawn. It has that kind of. It felt a little bit like The Color Purple,
Hmm.
um, just because of the time period. Um, but it just was a neat, like, kind of sneaking up on you of a horror film because you were so invested of this like um, almost like it's almost a little bit gangster um, because
Hmm.
there's twins, and so you're falling into this mythology of the twins, and then them starting this like jute joint, and the music of it was really interesting, and then there was this neat mythology that they started the movie with. So yeah, I loved it. I was a big fan of that. Some other things that I thought were pretty good that I've seen right now, especially for people who aren't that into or aren't big on being scared but enjoy a good horror movie was I really liked that cartoon Predator that came out where they're in the Predator world. It's like I want to say it's like
Yeah. Hmm.
four different stories over time, like a Viking. Um, there was a fighter pilot. What was the other one? There was another one, and at the end they tie it all together on the Predator planet. And I think it's just like kind of like exposing you to the new movie that's coming out. And so I really enjoyed that one. I
Hmm.
loved Prey. I thought Prey was like one of the most perfect
Yeah, that was great.
Predator movies out there. Like that was beautiful. I watched it in the was it Navajo? Is that the language with closed captions? And I thought that was
I'm
amazing.
not sure. Yeah. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I really liked that one. Trying to think what other stuff that I've seen lately. There's of course all the greatest hits. Like I'll usually go through a vampire uh, series where I'll watch like 30 Days of Night. I'll watch Fright Night. I'll
Hmm.
watch Nosferatu, the 70 version. Like I want to say it's like 78 or something
Yeah,
like that.
the Werner Herzog one.
Yeah, and that
Hmm.
one I think is there's been a lot of talk about the new one. It was okay, but to me that one's perfect. I didn't really need a remake of it. Um, So I'll still when I'm going to watch a vampire movie and I rewatched after okay so to get
Yeah.
ready for Nosferatu I read Dracula for the first time
Hmm.
um, and I rewatched Bram Stoker's Dracula which is good but to me it's over erotic I don't enjoy that part like it takes me out of the horror
Yeah, I've heard that
and
about that one. I haven't seen that, but I've heard that. Yeah.
yeah and then I rewatched Nosferatu and then I watched the there was another Nosferatu that happened like a couple months before the newest Nosferatu came out, and I watched that one. It's a
Hmm.
silent film. I would say it's got Doug Jones in it. I found out about it because he was promoting it, and that one was fun. I mean, it's very much like the original silent film,
Hmm.
kind of cheesy, has that kind of like grainy feel to it, and that was nice. And then I just watched that. But if I think I would have enjoyed the new Nosferatu more had I not watched Voyage of the Demeter
Hmm.
because that was to me an amazing Dracula film. Like it was so good that
Oh
I think
man.
I had a I think I was disappointed by the new one. I mean, not in a way like I in no way it's a great film,
Yeah.
but
I,
but I didn't enjoy it in the way that I thought I would after watching The Voyage of the Demeter because that one was great. Like I really liked that film,
hmm.
and I was hoping the new one would have that more of that feel.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta give that one a shot. I haven't seen that one. Uh,
Oh no, that was a great. I liked that one a lot. It was really good, and that almost. I mean, they're apples and oranges, but that one felt a lot more like Aliens to me.
hmm.
It had that kind of like you're on the ship, you're on this like you're stuck, and these things are happening that you, first of all, you have no idea. Like you're not expecting. It wouldn't be like, there's a killer on the boat because you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. But here's is like all these things are happening, but you can't figure out why they're happening or what it is. And then by the time you realize it's too late and you're just fighting this unbeatable enemy. Like it was
Hmm.
great. Like I really enjoyed that movie. Um,
Dang, yeah.
yeah, so I mean, those are the fun ones to watch. Uh,
Yeah.
I always have to go back to like some of the classics, like The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. That's a beautiful movie. I enjoyed the prequel that came out before that. I thought that was a really good adaptation.
The prequel.
Uh,
What was that?
well, it was there was another version of The Thing that came out, and it was almost exactly like a lot of people thought it was a reboot, but really, when you end that film, it segues into the John Carpenter's theme, which
Oh,
I
okay.
like movies that do that to me, that surprise me. Another one that surprised me that's a great horror movie is Doctor Sleep. Like
Hmm.
like that was a beautiful. Like I liked The Shining. I hadn't seen The Shining in a long time. I read the book. I've read the book like two or three times. I just reread it. I had jury duty, so I reread it during jury duty, and then I reread it because Quinn wanted to read it, so we read it together. Um, so I love that book.
Hmm.
The movie is good. I really like the movie, but you know what's funny is like over the years, I think I've enjoyed the movie less. Like
Hmm.
it's not one of my top anymore. But Doctor Sleep kind of like I'd rather watch Doctor Sleep. Like it gives
Yeah.
me everything that the Shining book has. It has that same feel, but then I thought the storytelling was way better,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
more believable. I think when I rewatch The Shining, there's still all those classic moments. I'm not, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I would never talk bad about The Shining, but when I'm thinking about like what movies we, because it's weird. It's like you have this discussion with people that's like, this is the greatest movie of all time, the Godfather. Godfather is an amazing movie, but like when I sit down and I'm like, what movie do I want to watch? I'm not like, let's watch The Godfather. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So there's movies like there's movies, there's books, there's art, there's stuff that's great, but then there's also like the junk food kind of movie. And I
Yeah.
don't want to say like I don't want to insult anybody by saying that junk food because that's not in no way do I mean it as an insult, but like there's
Right.
those
Right.
movies that I can watch like anytime, anywhere. Like I can watch like 30 Days of Night. Like I can just put it on and watch it. It could be background movie. It could be a movie that I'm totally invested in. It could be that movie that I'm like, I don't even know what I want to watch. And the minute I start it, I'm like hooked, you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
Doesn't mean that it's an award-winning film, but at the same time, like it's a movie that I can like watch over and over and over again. And so for me, like The Shining's a great movie. But do I want to watch it every time? Or anytime I don't know what to see, will I put it on? No. But Doctor Sleep in a heartbeat. Like I'd watch that one anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So I guess in my recommendations it would be, Doctor Sleep, uh, Voyage of the Demeter, and then Sinners is a great one. I highly recommend it.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Thank you, Sean. For coming on the podcast, Gorilla, and yeah. I mean, thank you for being such a strong supporter too of the podcast. I mean, you're one of the first people that I really felt like somebody was watching, you know? So that
Yeah.
was really nice. So anyway, thank you guys for listening, and see you on the next one. A few last words before we head out. I just want to say that I think this is one a really honest podcast, and I really admire that about Sean. That he really shared a lot about himself through this podcast. So it was for me it was a real treat, and I just wanted um, to say that really, and I really appreciate him as an artist, and I think everyone should check his work out. Also, if you haven't already heard, go on my Patreon and you'll get a free trial of stuff. You'll get stuff in the mail, and you'll get some recordings and all that good stuff. Also, subscribe, like, and subscribe, and uh, you'll do good. All right. Thank you, everybody, and bye bye.